Verse 50. He whose nature is purified by the practice of yama, niyama and the like, learns from the mouth of his guru the process which opens the way to the discovery of the great liberation. He whose whole being is immersed in the Brahman then rouses the Devi by Hamkara, pierces the center of the Linga, the mouth of which is closed, and is therefore invisible, and by means of the air and fire within him, places her within the Brahmadwara. Commentary. Having described the chakras, ending with the Sahasrara, he now wishes to speak of the union of Kundalini, and preliminary to that, he refers to the mode of rousing Kundalini. The sense conveyed by this verse is that the man who has attained success in yoga learns from his guru the process which consists of contracting the heart, rousing Kundalini by the power of the air and fire, and so forth, and having learned it from the mouth of his guru, he rouses Kundalini, attacking her with air and fire, and by uttering the kurcha hum, and by piercing the mouth of the Swayambhu Linga, places Kundalini within Brahmadwara, or in other words, within the mouth of the Nadi Chitrini. He whose nature is purified, Shushila, that is, the man who regularly practices yama and so forth, and has trained himself. By practicing yama, niyama, etc., yama niyama samya shashila, it must be observed that it is not merely by the practice of yama and niyama that perfection in the preliminary yoga practices is attained, but the sadhaka has by practice to destroy such inclinations as lust, anger and the like, which interfere with yoga, and cultivate others, such as controlling the inner air, steadiness of mind, and so forth, which are helpful in yoga practices. It is because of this that in verse 54 the author has used the word yamadhya in the plural. Practicing yama and the like is necessary, however, for those whose minds are disturbed by lust and other propensities. If, however, a man by reason of merit and good fortune acquires in a previous birth, and by his nature is free from anger, lust, and other passions, then he is capable of real yoga without the preliminary practices. This must be well understood. From the mouth of his guru, Srinatha Vakrat. The process cannot be learned without the instructions of the guru. Hence it has been said, it can be learnt from the guru alone, and not from 10 million shastras. Process, krama, that means steps or order, which opens the way to the discovery of the great liberation. Mahamoksha, Vartma, Prakasha. By this is meant the process by which the entrance into the channel of the Nadi Chitrini is opened out. Way of liberation, or Moksha Vartma, is the way through the channel within Chitrini. The discovery, or Prakasha, is made of this by opening one's way through it. He, or Sa, that is, the man who has distinguished himself by his success in yoga practices, whose whole being is immersed in the Brahman. Shuddha Buddhi Swabhava. Shuddha Buddhi means the Brahman, and he whose Swabhava or own being is in him. This compound word may also mean he whose being or bhava, by reason of the purity of his mind, that's Shuddha Buddhi, is immersed in the spirit or sva or atma. Rouses the Devi by Hamkara. Ham Karineva Devim. The Agama Kalpa Druma says, then, having mentally recited Hamsa, gently contract the anus. It therefore follows that in moving Kundalini, the Hamsa mantra should be uttered. The author of the Lalita Rasya following this says that in moving Kundalini, the mantra Hamsa should be employed. But from the fact that the part is to be contracted after the Hamsa mantra is recited, the intention appears to be that the Jivatma, which is of the shape of the flame of a lamp, should, by recitation of the Hamsa mantra, be brought from the heart to the Muladhara, and then moved along with Kundalini. The Agama Kalpa Druma in a subsequent passage says, raising, and again raising the Shakti with the Atma from the abode of Brahma, the excellent sadhaka should, and so forth. This shows that she should be led away along with Atma or Jivatma. The Kali Kulumitra says, having led Jiva from the heart by the Hamsa mantra to the Mula lotus, and having roused the Paravadevata Kundalini by Hamkara. The Kankala Malini says, O daughter of the king of mountains, having drawn the Jivatma by the Pranava, let the sadhaka move prana and gandha with Kundalini by the aid of the So-Ham mantra, and make the Devi enter the Swadhisthana. The wise should from the above texts understand that the Jivatma should be brought from the heart by the aid of either the Pranava or Hamsa mantra, and then Kundalini should be roused by the Krucha Bija alone, the mouth of which is closed, Guptam. This word may be read either as an adjective qualifying linga and mean unmanifested by reason of its mouth being closed, or may be read as an adverb qualifying places, and then the word would mean imperceptibly. In the Agama Kalpa Druma, Panchamashika, the mode of rousing the Kundalini is described in detail thus, as having seated oneself in the Padmasana posture, the two hands should be placed in the lap. Thereafter, having mentally recited the Hamsa mantra, the anus should be gently contracted. One should then repeatedly raise the air by the same way, and having raised it, let him pierce the chakra. I now speak of its process. In the Muladhara lotus is a very beautiful triangle. Inside it is Kama, meaning lustrous, like 10 million young suns above him, and surrounding Swayambhu Linga is Kundalini Shakti. Also, as the result of excitation by the Kamagni and the action of the Krucha mantra on her, she is seized with desire for Parahamsa. The Bhuta Shuddhi also says, O Shiva, the sadhaka should contract the chest, letting his breath remain there, and he should control the base of the throat and other parts of the body, and then suddenly opening the door by means of a key-like motion, that's kunchaka, and the fire of desire should be kindled, O Parmeshwari, by means of the air. Then the serpent who is sleeping on the linga in the Muladhara, and who is stung by the heat of the fire, should be awakened in the linga at the mouth of the yoni, and by the heat of her desire be led forcibly upwards. Move the air into the nadi according to the rules of kumbhaka, meaning retention of the breath, and the method shown by the Guru. Let the jiva thus controlled be led by the concealed passage, and by the upward breath make all the lotuses turn her heads upwards. Having fully awakened her, let the wise one lead her to Bhanu, meaning the sun, at the summit of the Meru, that's the Sahasrara. Now pay attention to the procedure established by a careful consideration of the above text. The yogi should sit in the proper posture and place his two hands with palms upward in his lap and steady his mind, chitta, by the Kechari mudra. He should next fill the interior of his body with air and hold it in by kumbhaka and contract the heart. By doing so, the escape of the upward breath is stopped. Then, when he feels that the air within him from the belly to the throat is tending downward through the channels in the nadis, he should contract the anus and stop the downward air. Then again, having raised the air, let him give the kama within the triangle in the pericarp of the Muladhara lotus a turn from left to the right. By so doing, the fire of kama there is kindled, and Kundalini gets heated or excited thereby. He should then pierce the mouth of the Swayambhu Linga, and through its aperture with the aid of the Hum Bija, lead her who desires union with Paramashiva within the mouth of the Chitrini Nadi. This is the clear sense of text. Verse 51. The Devi, who is Shuddha Sattva, pierces the three lingas, and having reached all the lotuses, which are known as Brahmanadi lotuses, shines therein in the fullness of her lustre. Thereafter, in her subtle state, lustrous like lightning and fine like the lotus fibre, she goes to the gleaming flame-like Shiva, the supreme bliss, and of a sudden produces the bliss of liberation. Commentary. Now he speaks of the mode of the union of Kundalini with Shiva. The meaning of this verse in brief is that the Devi Kundalini pierces the three lingas, Swayambhu, Bana and Ittara, and by doing so makes a passage for herself, and when she reaches the lotuses appertaining to the nadi called Brahma Nadi, she shines in her fullness of her lustre in these lotuses. Then, when in her subtle form, fine like the lotus fibre, she approaches Shiva, who is supreme bliss itself, and who is in his Bindu form in the pericarp of the Sahasrara, she brings to the sadhaka the bliss of eternal liberation, when that is least expected. Pierces, or Bheda, means making a passage through that which is obstructed. Shuddha Sattva, Sattva, Ati-sattva, Paramasattva, Suddha Sattva, and Vishuddha Sattva are the 5 different degrees of Chaitanya pervading the body. Shuddha Sattva is therefore the 4th or Turiya stage. By Brahma Nadi is meant Chitrini. The lotuses are the 6 lotuses, which are strung upon Chitrini. The 3 lingas, Lingatrayam. The 3 lingas already described. By this we are to understand that the 6 chakras and 5 Shivas are included. She pierces all these, which altogether make 14 knots, or granthi. The Shaktanadi Tarangini speaks of her who goes along the channel of Brahman, having pierced the 14 knots. The Swatantra speaks of the distinctive features of Linga and Shiva. The Devi goes to Brahman after having pierced the Shivas placed in the 6 chakras. As she reaches each of the different chakras, she acquires the beauty characteristic of each and bewitches Maheshana, and having there repeatedly enjoyed him who is filled with joy, she reaches the Eternal One, or Shashvata. He is said to be transpierced, as he is bewitched by Para. The Maya Tantra says, the Devi goes along the Shakti Marga, piercing the 3 lingas in the chakras in each of her different forms, and having attained union in the Sahasrara with Nishkala, or Brahman, she is satisfied. Tattadrupena, that is, in the forms of Vaikari, Madhyama, and Pashyanti. It has been said that the first state, or bhava, is Vaikari, and Madhyama is placed in the heart. Between the eyebrows is Pashyanti state, and the Para state is in the Bindu. The meaning of the above is that the 4 sound-producing Shaktis, Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari, are identical with Kundalini. Hence, at the time when Kundalini starts to go to Sahasrara, she in her form of Vaikari bewitches Swayambhu Linga. She then similarly bewitches Vana Linga in the heart as Madhyama, and Ittara Linga between the eyebrows as Pashyanti. And then when she reaches Parabindu, she attains the stage of Para, or Parabhava. The method of Chakrabheda is thus described as, O Parmeshwari, let the sadhaka carry along with her the lotuses which are on the Chitrini, and which have their origin in the mud of blood and fat. Let him enter the channel or nala on the left from below, and in this way Chakrabheda, or piercing the chakra, is effected. After having thus pierced the 6 chakras, she along with Jiva should be led as the rider guides a trained mare by the reins. Also, the Devi should be led by the Hamsa mantra to the Sahasrara through the points of union of the 6 chakras, that is, with the nadis along the road of Shushumna. By gleaming flame-like, Shukshma Dhammi Pradipi, meaning the gleam is the Hamsa, which is the luminous energy or Tejas of the Parabindu in its aspect as Nirvana Shakti. The Paramashiva shines with it. We now describe how the joy of liberation is brought about. The Devi, by dissolving Kundalini in the Parabindu, effects the liberation of some sadhakas through their meditation upon the identity of Shiva and Atma in the Bindu. She does so in the case of others by a similar process, and by their meditation on Shakti. In other cases again, this is done by concentration of thought on the Parama Purusha, and in another case by the meditation of the sadhaka on the bliss of union in the Bindu of Shiva and Shakti. The Maya Tantra says, those who are learned in yoga say that it is the union of Jiva and Atma. According to others, it is the experience of the identity of Shiva and Atma. The Agamavadis proclaim that yoga is the knowledge relating to Shakti. Otherwise, men say that the knowledge of the Purana Purusha is yoga, and others again, the Prakritivadis, declare that the bliss of union of Shiva and Shakti is yoga. By union of Jiva and Atma is meant Samadhi. By yoga is meant that by which oneness is attained with the Paramatma. Having spoken of Samadhi, he then deals with the different kinds of yoga in dhyana. By bliss of union of Shiva and Shakti is meant the sense of enjoyment arising from the union of male and female. The Brihat Shrikama speaks of the manner in which this is to be meditated upon. It says, they with the eye of knowledge see the stainless Kala who is united with Chidananda on Nada. He is the Mahadeva, white like pure crystal, and is the effulgent first cause, and she is Para, the lovely woman of beauteous body, whose limbs are listless by reason of her great passion. By Kala in the above is meant Kundalini. Vimbharupa Nidana qualifies Parashiva or Chidananda. Chidananda is Bindu Rupa Shiva or Parashiva. It also has been said elsewhere, having united Kundali with Shunya Rupa, Parashiva, and having caused the Devi so united to drink the excellent nectar from their union, she by the same way should be brought back to the Kula cavity. Having brought them together and meditated upon their union, let the Deha Devata be satisfied with the nectar which flows from such a union. The Gandharva Malika speaks of a different process. It says, the Sahasrara is the beautiful and auspicious place of Sadashiva. It is free from sorrow and divinely beautiful with trees which always bear and are adorned by flowers and fruits. The Kalpa tree adds to its beauty. This tree contains all the 5 elements and is possessed of the 3 gunas. The 4 Vedas are its 4 branches. It is laden with beautiful, unfading flowers which are yellow, white, black, red, green, and of variegated color. Having meditated on the Kalpa tree in this manner, then meditate upon the jeweled altar below it. O beauteous one, on it is a beautiful bed adorned with various kinds of cloth and mandara flowers, and scented with many kinds of scents. It is there that Mahadeva constantly stays. Meditate upon Sadashiva, who is like the purest crystal, adorned with all kinds of gems, long-armed and of enchanting beauty. He is ever gracious and smiling. In his ears are earrings, and a chain of gems goes around his neck. A garland of 1,000 lotuses resting on his neck adorns his body. He has 8 arms and 3 eyes, like the petals of the lotus. On his 2 feet he wears twinkling toe ornaments, and his body is Shabda Brahma. O lotus-eyed one, meditate thus on his gross body, or Stulavapu. He is the quiescent corpse-like Deva within the lotus, who is void of all action. It also says, meditate upon the Devi Kundalini, who encircles the Swayambhu Linga. Lead the Devi with the aid of the Hamsa mantra to the Sahasrara, where, O Parmeshwari, is the great Sadashiva. And then place there the beautiful Kundalini who is excited by her desire. Kundalini, O beloved, then wakes up and kisses the lotus mouth of Shiva, who is gladdened by the scent of her lotus-like mouth. And O Devshi, she then enjoys Sadashiva but a very little while, when immediately, O Devi, O Parmeshwari, there issues nectar. This nectar issuing from their union is of the color of lak. With this nectar, O Devshi, should the Paradevata be satisfied. Having thus satisfied the Devatas in the 6 chakras with that ambrosial stream, the wise one should by the same way bring her back to Muladhara. The mind should in this process of going and coming be dissolved there. O Parvati, he who practices this yoga day by day is freed from decay and death, and is liberated from the bondage of this world. Other similar processes should be looked for in other tantras. Verse 52. The wise and excellent yogi, wrapped in ecstasy and devoted to the lotus feet of his guru, should lead Kula Kundalini along with Jiva to her Lord, the Parashiva, in the abode of liberation within the pure lotus, and meditate upon her who grants all desires as the Chaitanya Rupa Bhagavati. When he thus leads Kula Kundalini, he should make all things absorb into her. Commentary. Having spoken of the Dhyana Yoga of Kundalini, he now speaks of Samadhi Yoga of Kundalini. The substance of this verse is that the wise and excellent yogi, intent on the attainment of Samadhi, should first of all lead her who has been roused, who then, taking with her Jiva, reaches the Brahmadwara, causing the absorption into herself of everything as she moves along. When she who is in the Ishtadevata and the giver of all good fruits is led up to her Lord and is united with him, the Parabindu, she should be meditated upon as the Supreme. When she has been led to her Lord Shiva, the Parabindu, and has been united with him, she should be meditated upon as the Ishtadevata who grants good fruit. He should there in the Sahasrara dissolve the Parabindu in the Chidatma, which is in the void within the Bindu, and should meditate upon her Kundalini as Shuddha Chaitanya Rupa. He thus realizes the identity of Jiva and Atma, being conscious within himself that I am he, and having dissolved the Chitta, he remains unmoved by reason of his full and all-pervading knowledge. The revered preceptor Srimat Acharya has said, the wise one should absorb the Karana Makara into the Chidatma and realize, I am Chidatma. I am eternal, pure or Shuddha, enlightened or Buddha, liberated or Mukta. I am that which alone is, or Sat, without a second, Advaya. I am supreme bliss, wherein is all bliss, and Vasudeva's very self. I am Om. Having realized that the mind or Chitta is the discriminator, he absorbs it into the witness. Let's not the mind be distracted when it's absorbed into Chidatma. Let him, the sadhaka, rest in the fullness of his illumination, like a deep and motionless ocean. Makara is said for those who are the sadhakas of the pranava. By karana here is meant parabindu. By I am Vasudeva, the Vaishnavas are alluded to. We thus see that the worshipper of any particular devata should realize that Kundalini is one with the object of his worship. In pranava worship, for instance, the worshipper realizes his identity with the Omkara. In other forms of worship, he realizes his identity with Kundalini, who is embodied by all the mantras of different worshippers. The Tantra Atantra says, the king among yogis becomes full of Brahma bliss by making his mind the abode of the great void, which is set in the light of the sun, moon, and fire. By lead Kundalini along with Jiva, Jivena Sardham Nitva is meant. The Jivatma, which is in the Hamsa, in form like the tapering flame of a light, should be brought to the Muladhara from its place in the heart, and then led along with Kundalini. By abode of liberation, Moksha Dhamani means this qualifies pure lotus or Shuddha Padma. It is here that liberation is attained. By devoted to the two lotus feet of his Guru, Guru Pada Padma Yuga Lalambi. This qualifies Yogindra, that means excellent yogi. The author means that Siddhi can only be attained by the instructions of the Guru. The sadhaka should therefore seek shelter at his feet. By wrapped in ecstasy, Samadhao Yatta, it means the Kulnarva Tantra defines Samadhi thus. Samadhi is that kind of contemplation in which there is neither here nor not here, which is illumination and is still like the ocean, and which is the void itself. Also elsewhere, the Munis declare that the constant realization of the identity of the Jivatma with the Paramatma is Samadhi, which is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. Patanjali defines yoga to be the control of the modifications of Chitta. Rapt or Yatta, that is, he who constantly and with undivided attention practices it. When he leads Kula Kundalini, he should make all things absorb into her. Laya Vashat Nitva. Below is shown the process of absorption. O Devashi, the Lamkara should next be meditated upon in the triangle. There should also Brahma and then Kamadeva be contemplated. Having fixed Jiva with the utterance of the pranava, let him lead the woman who is longing for the satisfaction of her passion to the place of her husband. O Queen of the Devas! O great Queen! O beloved of my life! let him think of Garna and meditate on the adorable Shakti Dakini. O daughter of the mountain, O queen of the Ganas, O mother, all these should be led into Prithvi. Then, O great queen, the blessed Prithvi should be absorbed into Gandha. And then, O daughter of the mountain king, the Jivatma should be drawn from the heart with the pranava or mantra, and the sadhaka should lead prana, gandha, and kundalini into Swadhisthana with the mantra So-ham. In its, that's the Swadhisthana pericap, should Varuna and Hari be meditated upon. And O beauteous one, after meditating on Rakini, all these and Gandha should be absorbed into Rasa, and Jivatma, Kundalini, and Rasa should be moved into Manipura. O thou of beautiful hips, in its pericap the sadhaka should meditate upon fire and also on Rudra, who is the destroyer of all, as being in the company of Shakti Lakini, and beautiful to behold. And O Shiva, let him next meditate on the lustrous sense of vision, and absorb all these and rasa, meaning taste, into Rupa, meaning sight, and thereafter lead Jivatma, Kundalini, and Rupa into Anahata. Let him meditate in its pericap on Vayu, who dwells in the region of Jiva, and also on the Yoni Mandala, which is made beauteous by the presence of the Bana Linga. Let him there also meditate on Vayu as united with Rakini, and touch, that is, Tvadriya or Sparsha. And there, O thou who purifiest Jiva, Kundalini, and Rupa, should be placed in Sparsha, meaning touch. And then Jiva, Kundalini, and Sparsha should be placed in the Vishuddha. Let him meditate in its pericap on the ethereal region, and on Shiva accompanied by Shakini, and having placed speech, or Vak, and hearing, or Stotra, in ether. Let him, O daughter of the mountain, place all these and Sparsha in Shabda, or sound, and place Jiva, Kundalini, and Shabda in the Agnya Chakra. The above passages are from Kankalmalini Tantra. Triangle in the above is the triangle in the Muladhara, from which the commencement is made. Lamkara should be meditated upon as within this triangle. Leading of Jiva with the use of pranava is a variant practice. Visarga Nakshaka Mini. By Visarga is meant the agitation caused by an excess of kama or desire. The compound word means she who is striving to satisfy her desire. The bringing of Jiva by the Hamsa mantra is, according to the teaching of some, place of her husband. This is the Bindu, the Shiva in the lotus of 1,000 petals. Sadhaka should lead her there. The Bija Lam, Brahma, Kamadeva, Dakini Shakti, and the sense of smell, Grandendriya, all these are absorbed into Prithvi, and Prithvi is absorbed into Gandha Tattva. Jivatma, Kundalini, and Gandha Tattva are drawn upwards by the pranava and brought into the Swadhisthana by So-ham mantra. This is the process to be applied right through. After leading Jiva, Kundalini, and Shabda Tattva into Agnya Chakra, Shabda Tattva should be absorbed into the Amkara which is there, and Amkara into Mahat Tattva, and Mahat Tattva into Shukshma Prakriti, whose name is Hiranyagarbha, and Prakriti again into Parabindu. The mantra Tantra Praksha says, let Vyoma or ether be absorbed into Ahamkara, and the latter with Shabda into Mahat, and Mahat again into the unmanifest, supreme cause of all the Shaktis. Let the sadhaka think attentively that all things beginning with Prithvi are absorbed into Vishnu, the cause who is Sat, Chit and Ananda. That is, Mahat, which is all Shaktis, should be absorbed into Shukshma Prakriti, who is known by the name of Hiranyagarbha, and that Prakriti should be absorbed into Para, by which is meant the cause in the form of Parabindu. In this connection, the Acharya has laid down the rule that the gross should be dissolved into the subtle. It should be attentively considered and practiced that the gross is absorbed into the subtle, and all into Chidatma. The absorption of all things, beginning with Prithvi and ending with Anahata, takes place in the aforesaid manner. That being so, the feet and the sense of smell, and all pertaining to Prithvi, are dissolved in the place of Prithvi, as they inhere in Prithvi. Similarly, the hands, the sense of taste, and all that pertains to water, are dissolved in the region of water. In the region of fire are dissolved the anus, the sense of vision, and all that pertains to fire. In the region of air, the genitals and sense of touch, and all that pertains to Vayu are dissolved. In the place of Akasha are dissolved the sense of speech and hearing, and all that pertains to Akasha. In the Agnya Chakra, the dissolution of Ahamkara, Mahat, Shukshma, Prakriti, and so forth takes place, each dissolving into its own immediate cause. The letters of the alphabet should then be absorbed in the reverse order, beginning with Ksha-kara and ending with A-kara. By all things, it is meant that Bindu, Bodhini, and so forth, which have been shown above to be causal bodies, should be dissolved in a reversed order, into the primordial cause, the Parabindu. Thus the Brahman alone remains. The process is thus described as, the sadhaka, having thus made his determination, should dissolve the letters of the alphabet in the Nyasa sthana. The dissolution of Ksha is in La, and La in Ha. Ha again is dissolved into Sa, and Sa into Sha, and thus it goes on till A is reached. This should be very carefully done. Dissolve the two letters into Bindu, and dissolve Bindu into Kala. Dissolve Kala in Nada, and dissolve Nada into Nadanta, and this into Unmani, and Unmani into Vishnu Vaktra. Vishnu Vaktra should be dissolved into Guru Vaktra. Let the excellent sadhaka then realize that all the letters are dissolved in Paramashiva. By Vishnu Vaktra is meant Pum Bindu. The Surya Bindu is called the face, and below are moon and fire. Bindu is said to be the male, and Visarga is Prakriti. All these authorities imply the same thing, and go to prove that it is the mouth of Vishnu where dissolution should take place. The following from Keshavacharya also leads to the same conclusion. It says, lead her, Unmani, into the male, which is the Bindu. Lead Bindu into Paramatma, and Paramatma into Kalatva, and this latter into Shakti, and Shakti into Chidatma, which is the supreme, the tranquil and effulgent. We have seen that each dissolves into its own immediate cause. Nadanta is therefore dissolved into Vyapaka Shakti, the Vyapaka Shakti in Unmani, and Unmani in Samani, Samani into Vishnu Vaktra. When the letters have thus dissolved, all the 6 chakras are dissolved, as the petals of the lotuses consist of letters. The Vishvasara Tantra says, the petals of the lotuses are the letters of the alphabet beginning with A. The Sammohana Tantra describes the dissolution of the lotuses and the petals thus: dissolve the letters from Va to Sa of the petals in Brahma, and dissolve Brahma in the lotus of the 6 petals which contain the letters Ba to La, and which is called Swadhisthana. Do this as the Guru directs, and so forth, and ending with, the wise one should then dissolve it, that's Vishuddha, in the lotus of 2 petals which contain the 2 letters Ha and Ksha, and dissolve the 2 letters which are in the latter lotus into Bindu, and dissolve Bindu into Kala. We thus see that the 4 letters in the Muladhara are dissolved therein, and Muladhara is dissolved in Swadhisthana. Proceeding in this way until the Agnya Chakra is reached, the letters Ha and Ksha, which are there, are also dissolved at this place. Then the lotus itself is dissolved into Bindu, Bindu into Bodhini, and proceeding in this way, as already shown, everything is dissolved into Parabindu. When the Agnya Chakra is dissolved, all that it contains in its pericap, Hakini, Itaralinga, Pranava, are unable to exist without support, and therefore, after the dissolution into Prakriti, these are all dissolved into Parabindu. Verse 53. The beautiful Kundali drinks the excellent red nectar issuing from Parashiva, and returns from there where shines eternal and transcendent bliss in all its glory along the path of Kula, and again enters the Muladhara. The yogi who has gained steadiness of mind makes offering to the Ishta Devata and to the Devatas in the 6 centers, Dakini and others, with that stream of celestial nectar which is in the vessel of Brahmanda, the knowledge whereof he has gained through the tradition of the Gurus. Commentary. He now speaks of what should be done after all the different kinds of yoga described have been understood. The meaning of this verse is that the beautiful Kundali drinks the excellent nectar issuing from Parashiva, and having emerged from the place of eternal and transcendent bliss, she passes along the path of Kula and re-enters Muladhara. The yogi, after having understood the different matters mentioned, should think of the inseparate union of Shiva and Shakti, and with the excellent nectar produced from the bliss of such union with Parashiva, make offering to Kundalini. Path of Kula, Kulapata, the path of Brahman, the channel in Chitrini. Kundalini drinks the nectar with which Tarpana, or offering, is made to her. The following authority says, having effected their union and having made her drink, it follows therefore that she is made to drink. The nectar is red like the color of lac. From there where shines eternal and transcendent bliss, Nityananda Mahodayat, that is, she returns from the place where eternal and transcendent bliss is enjoyed, that is, where the Brahman is clearly realized. Again enters Muladhara, Mulle Vishit. She has to be brought back in the same way as she was led upward. As she passed through the different lingas and chakras in their order when going upward, so does she when returning to the Muladhara. The revered great preceptor says, Kuharini, thou sprinklest all things with the stream of nectar which flows from the tips of thy 2 feet, and as thou returnest to thy own place, thou vivifiest and makest visible all things that were aforetime invisible, and on reaching thy abode thou dost resume thy snake-like coil and sleep. As thou returnest, thou vivifiest and makest visible. This describes the return of Kundali to her own place. As she returns, she infuses rasa into various things she had previously absorbed into herself when going upward, and by the infusion of rasa she makes them all visible and manifest. Her passage was laya krama, and her return shristi krama. Hence it has been said, Kundali, who is bliss, the queen of the suras, goes back in the same way to the Adhara lotus. The Bhuttashuddhi Pranakarana has the following. Let the tattvas, Prithvi, etc., in their order, as also Jiva and Kundalini, be led back from Paramatma, and each placed in her respective position. She is then particularly described as, she is lustrous when first she goes, and she is ambrosial when she returns. By stream of celestial nectar, Divya Amrita Dhara, means this is the excellent nectar which has already been shown is produced by the union of Shiva and Shakti, and runs in a stream from Brahmarandra to Muladhara. It is for this reason that the author says in verse 3 that Brahmadwara, which shines in her mouth, is the entrance to the place sprinkled by ambrosia, by knowledge whereof he has gained through the tradition of the Gurus. Yoga Parampara Vidyata means, this qualifies stream of nectar. It means that the knowledge is gained from the instructions in yoga practice handed down traditionally through the succession of gurus, which is in the vessel of Brahmananda. Brahmananda Bhanda Stitam. This qualifies Amrita or nectar. The vessel or support on which the Brahmanda or universe rests is Kundalini. Kundalini is the Bhanda or support, as she is the source of all. By Daivatam is meant the Ishta Devata and Dakini and others in the 6 chakras. It has been said, O Devashi, with this nectar should offering or tarpana be made to the Parama Devata, and then having done tarpana to the Devatas in the 6 chakras, and so forth. Verse 54. The yogi who has, after practice of yama, niyama, and the like, learnt this excellent method from the 2 lotus feet of the auspicious Diksha Guru, which are the source of uninterrupted joy, and whose mind, manas, is controlled, is never born again in this world of samsara. For him there is no dissolution, even at the time of final dissolution. Gladdened by constant realization of that which is the source of eternal bliss, he becomes full of peace and foremost among all yogis. Commentary. He here speaks of the good to be gained by knowing the method of yoga practice. From the lotus feet of his auspicious Diksha Guru, which are the source of uninterrupted joy. Sri Diksha Guru Pada Padma Yugala Moda Pravadhyotati. Amoda means joy or bliss, and by prava is meant uninterrupted and continuous connection. Amoda prava therefore means Nityananda, or eternal bliss. Bliss such as this comes from the lotus feet of the Guru, which also lead to a knowledge of yoga practice. The Diksha Guru is here spoken of, as he is the first to initiate, and also by reason of his preeminence. But in his absence, refuge may be sought with other gurus. It has therefore been said, as a bee desirous of honey goes from one flower to another, so does the disciple desirous of knowledge go from one guru to another. Gladdened by constant realization of that which is the source of eternal bliss, Nityananda Parampara Pramudita, that is, who is united with the stream of eternal bliss. Foremost among the good, Satam Agrani, that is, he is to be counted to be foremost among the good who are the yogis. Verse 55. If the yogi who is devoted to the lotus feet of his Guru, with heart unperturbed and concentrated mind, reads this work, which is the supreme source of the knowledge of liberation, and which is faultless, pure, and most secret, then of a very surety his mind dances at the feet of his Ishta Devata. Commentary. Here he speaks of the good to be gained by the study of the verses relating to the 6 chakras. Heart unperturbed, Swabhava Siddha, that is, engrossed in his own true spiritual being. Concentrated mind, Yatantar Mana, that is, he who by practice of yoga has steadied and concentrated his mind on the inner spirit, or Antaratma. The rest is clear. Here ends the 8th section of the explanation of the verses descriptive of the 6 chakras, forming part of the Sri Tattva Chintamani, composed by Sri Purnanandayati.